My wife stole $150, $0 from our joint account to run off with her business partner just before our divorce. And now she's claiming I'm entitled to half of her new company's $2 million valuation. Legal chaos I never saw coming. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be cheating on me with her business partner, of all people. Honestly, the whole thing felt like a bad joke at first, like some twisted soap opera plot. But it's real and it's messy, and it's left me questioning everything I thought I knew about her, about us, about trust. It all started about 6 months ago. Lisa and I had been together for nearly 10 years. We built a life, a home, a business, our joint venture that made us a decent living. We had our ups and downs, sure, but I thought we were solid. Until one day I noticed her acting weird. She'd be secretive on her phone, excuse herself to take calls, and suddenly she was more obsessed with her laptop than usual. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe she was stressed with work or dealing with some personal stuff. But then I caught her in a lie about where she was the night before, claiming she was out with her sister when I saw her car in a completely different part of town. That was the first crack. I started snooping, not because I wanted to invade her privacy, but because I felt something was off. I found texts, flirty, suggestive messages with her business partner, Mark. They'd been exchanging late-night texts about meetings, secret plans, and little inside jokes that didn't include me. I saw the way she looked at him in those messages, like he was the only person in the world who understood her. That hurt worse than I expected. I confronted her about it, but she just brushed it off, saying I was paranoid, that Mark was just a friend, that I was overreacting. Then came the money. We had a joint account, and I noticed a sudden, strange withdrawal of $150, $0. That's a lot of money, more than I'd ever seen in our account at once. When I asked her about it, she told me she was investing in a new business venture, that it was for her dream project, and that I shouldn't worry. She looked me dead in the eyes and lied straight through her teeth, saying it was all above board, but I had a gut feeling. I started digging into her financials, and that's when I found out the truth. She'd stolen that money, drained our account to run off with Mark and start her own company. That's where everything went to hell. I felt sick, betrayed, furious. I couldn't believe she'd do that, especially after all the years we'd built together. It was like she just decided to throw everything away for some guy and a new business. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. How could she lie so easily? How could she betray me like that? I started to see the cracks in our marriage that I'd ignored for too long. The signs had been there, I guess. I just refused to see them. Now, I was left trying to piece my life back together, knowing she was out there, probably spending the money we worked so hard for and planning her future with Mark. And I knew this was only the beginning. After I uncovered the truth about the money and her affair, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't think straight. The betrayal cut deep, but what really pushed me over the edge was realizing she had lied about everything, her feelings, her intentions, even her plans for the future. I kept asking myself, how could she do this? How could she lie so blatantly, knowing it was destroying us? I decided I needed to confront her face to face. The next day I called her at work, told her I needed to talk. She sounded annoyed, like I was bothering her during some important meeting. When she finally came home that evening, I was already waiting in the living room, my hands trembling. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk she's perfected over the years, like she knew she was the queen of the world and I was just some idiot who didn't get it. I laid it all out, her texts, the withdrawal, the lies, the stolen money. Her face didn't change much at first. She looked at me like I was some kind of paranoid fool. "You're overreacting," she snapped. "Mark and I are just friends. You're jealous. You always jump to conclusions." I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes, but she masked it with that dismissive tone. She kept lying, saying she was doing everything for us, that the money was an investment, that Mark was just helping her with the business. She spun stories, spun lies, trying to make me doubt my own instincts. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The rage bubbled up inside me. I could feel it boiling over. This wasn't just about the money or some affair. It was about respect, about being betrayed by the woman I loved. I told her I knew she was planning to run off with Mark, that I knew she'd stolen from us and was trying to start her own empire with his help. That's when she lost her cool. She started yelling, calling me paranoid, accusing me of trying to sabotage her, saying I was just insecure and jealous. She told me I was crazy for thinking she'd cheat or steal from me. That moment, I realized how good she was at lying. She had this way of turning everything around, making me look like the bad guy. As the confrontation escalated, I felt like I was losing my mind. I was furious but also heartbroken. I'd spent years building a life with her, trusting her, believing in us. And now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who was willing to betray everything for her own greed and her affair. I wanted to believe there was some way out, some way to fix this, but deep down I knew it was too late. The damage was done, and I had to face the reality that my marriage was over. She was gone, not just physically, but emotionally and morally too. That night I stayed up, going over everything again and again. The betrayal was like a knife twisting in my gut. I felt numb, but also a strange sense of clarity. I knew I had to do something about the money, about the affair, about her plans. I couldn't let her get away with it. I decided I'd fight for what was rightfully mine, no matter how ugly it got. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do next, but I knew I couldn't let her continue to lie, cheat, and steal without consequences. This was only the beginning of a long, messy battle. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, financial audits, and sleepless nights. I felt like I was caught in a storm I couldn't control. Every time I thought about Lisa's lies, her betrayal, my blood boiled all over again. The worst part was knowing she was already planning to run off with her new company, her dream project valued at over $1 million now. She kept claiming I was entitled to half of it, which made me laugh in disbelief. Half of a company she just started. That's not how any of this works. But she argued, spun stories, and played the victim, saying I was trying to ruin her future. I knew I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer, someone who specialized in divorce and financial fraud. I showed him everything: texts, bank statements, her secret emails with Mark. At first, Lisa tried to deny everything. She called me paranoid, accused me of trying to sabotage her, said I was just jealous of her success. She even had the nerve to say I was controlling and insecure. It was laughable. I'd never been insecure about her before, but her actions proved otherwise. The woman I married had become a liar, a thief, and an adulteress. My lawyer told me I had a solid case to recover the stolen money and to prevent her from transferring assets or selling off her new company without my knowledge. It was a fight I didn't want, but I knew I couldn't let her walk away with everything she'd stolen. I also started looking into how to get a restraining order, just in case she tried to do something crazy. The more I dug, the more I realized she'd been planning this for months, maybe even longer. She'd been sneaking around, lying about her whereabouts, secretly withdrawing money, and building her new empire behind my back. I couldn't help but feel a mix of anger, betrayal, and helplessness. Every day I woke up with this heavy weight in my chest, knowing that Lisa had destroyed what we built together. She lied so convincingly, I sometimes doubted my own instincts, but I refused to be a victim of her manipulations. I told myself I'd fight her every step of the way. I knew I couldn't undo what she'd done, but I could make sure she didn't get away with it either. I was determined to get justice, even if it meant tearing everything apart. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act. She'd call, send texts, try to guilt-trip me into backing down. She'd lie about the business, about her intentions, about how much she loved me. But I saw through it. I saw her for what she truly was, a woman willing to destroy her marriage for a quick buck and a new partner. Every lie, every excuse only made me angrier. I started to realize that the person I once loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. And the worst part, I still loved her even as I hated what she'd done. That's the fucked up part. I was angry at her, but I was also mourning the woman I thought I knew. I knew I had to stay strong, stay focused. I couldn't let her manipulate her way out of this. I had to fight for what was rightfully mine, our shared assets, the money she stole, and the truth. I told myself that I'd get through this, that I'd come out the other side with some semblance of justice. I didn't know exactly what that looked like yet, but I knew I wouldn't let her ruin me. Without a fight, The chaos was just beginning, and I was going to make sure she paid for every lie, every betrayal, and every dollar she stole. The legal process moved faster than I expected, but that didn't make it any easier. My lawyer filed the necessary paperwork to freeze her assets and prevent her from transferring any part of her new company. Lisa didn't take it well. She called me nonstop, screaming, crying, accusing me of trying to ruin her. She said I was jealous, insecure, and that I was just trying to hold her back from her destiny. She even had the audacity to claim she was doing this all for us, that her new company would be a huge success, and I was just a petty husband trying to sabotage her. I think what hurt the most was how she twisted everything around, how she turned herself into the victim. She told everyone that I was controlling and paranoid, that I didn't support her ambitions, and that I was just trying to keep her trapped. Meanwhile, I had the evidence, her secret emails, the withdrawal records, the texts with Mark, that proved she'd been lying to me for months. I felt like I was fighting a ghost, trying to hold on to a marriage that was already dead. But the fight wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, about dignity. I started to realize that Lisa's version of success was built on deception and betrayal. She lied about her intentions, stolen from us, and now she was trying to spin it into some kind of noble pursuit. Honestly, I was furious. Every time she called, I'd hang up or ignore it. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I had my lawyer working behind the scenes, gathering more evidence, preparing for court. I knew the fight was only starting, and I had to be ready for whatever she threw at me. One night, I found myself staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. The memories of our life together, now tainted by her lies. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I let it get so bad. I felt stupid for trusting her so blindly, for thinking we had a future built on honesty. That's when I realized I was going to need to rebuild, not just my finances, but also my sense of self. I had to remember who I was before Lisa, before all this chaos, and hold on to that. I also knew I couldn't let her win emotionally, even if she was winning financially, for now. I decided I'd focus on getting justice, protecting what was left of our assets, and making sure she couldn't get away with her lies. I couldn't change what she'd done, but I could control how I responded. I started reaching out to friends and family, telling them what had happened, not for sympathy, but for support. I needed to lean on someone and not fall apart entirely. The worst part was feeling so alone in this mess. I'd always thought we were in this together, that we'd face everything side by side. Now, I was fighting her alone, trying to hold everything together while she was out there, building her new empire on my stolen money and her lies. I couldn't believe how fast everything had fallen apart. The woman I loved had turned into a stranger, and I was left to pick up the pieces. I knew this was just the start of a long, ugly battle, one I wasn't sure I'd win, but I was damn sure I wasn't going to give up without a fight. The court date finally arrived after weeks of legal battles and sleepless nights. I remember sitting in that cold courtroom, feeling like I was on trial myself. Lisa looked smug, dressed to impress, acting like she was the victim. Her words were slick, full of lies about how she was doing everything for us, how I was trying to hold her back, and how her new company was just a small step toward her dreams. She spun her usual story, but I knew better. I had all the evidence, her secret emails, bank withdrawals, text messages, and I was ready to lay it all out. When the judge called the case, I felt a mix of nerves and anger. I presented everything, showing how Lisa had drained our joint account, stolen $150, $0, and lied about her intentions. I explained how she'd been planning this for months, secretly building her new business with Mark while pretending everything was fine. The courtroom was tense, and I could see the judge was skeptical at first, but as I laid out the facts, her expression changed. Lisa tried to deny everything, claiming she was investing in her future, that I was jealous, and that her new company was a legitimate venture. But her words sounded hollow, rehearsed. The evidence was clear. She'd lied, stolen, and manipulated her way into this mess. The judge listened carefully, asked questions, and eventually ruled that the stolen money had to be returned to our joint account, and Lisa was not to transfer or sell any part of her new company until further notice. That ruling felt like a small victory, but I knew it wasn't the end. Lisa's reaction was furious. She screamed at the court, calling the whole process unfair, claiming she was the real victim. Her face was red with rage, and she kept calling me controlling and jealous, even as her entire facade crumbled. I felt a strange mixture of relief and disappointment. Relief because I finally had some justice, but disappointment because I knew this was just a chapter, not the whole story. After the hearing, I stayed behind to talk to my lawyer. We discussed the next steps: filing for divorce, seeking full custody of our assets, and making sure she couldn't continue her schemes. I was exhausted both physically and emotionally, but I felt a strange sense of clarity. I'd fought for what was right, what was mine, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate or ruin me anymore. This wasn't about revenge alone, it was about reclaiming my life and integrity. In the days that followed, Lisa becoming more distant and bitter. She tried to contact me, but I refused to engage much. I knew her game. She wanted to guilt-trip me, to make me feel bad for exposing her. But I had no regrets. I saw her for what she really was, a woman who'd betrayed everything we built, who'd stolen from me, and who'd lied her way into a new life. I realized I had been foolish to trust her blindly, but I also learned that sometimes you have to fight for your truth, even if it costs everything you thought you knew. The whole experience has left me, but also stronger. I've learned that love isn't enough when betrayal is involved. Trust has to be earned, and sometimes the hardest lessons come at the highest cost. I don't know what the future holds, but I do know I'll never let someone else's greed or lies destroy me again. I'm still healing, still piecing myself back together, but I'm determined to rebuild, better, wiser, and more cautious than ever. Looking back, I realize how much this whole ordeal has changed me, maybe more than I expected. I used to think love and trust were enough to get through anything, but now I see that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail just to protect what's yours. Lisa's betrayal was a wake-up call. It showed me that people can hide their true selves behind a pretty face and a convincing smile. That lesson, as painful as it was, forced me to everything I believed about honesty, loyalty, and what I deserve. Since everything came crashing down, I've taken time to reflect on what really matters. I've reconnected with friends and family, people who stood by me when I needed support. I've started rebuilding my confidence, piece by piece, and I've learned to trust my instincts again. I've come to accept that not everyone is who they seem, and that sometimes the biggest betrayal comes from the person you trust the most. The money, the lies, the affair, those are all part of a story I'll never forget. But more than that, I've learned that revenge isn't about getting even or punishing someone. It's about reclaiming your peace and dignity. I could have let her ruin me completely, but instead, I chose to stand up, fight back, and come out of this stronger. I refused to let her steal my happiness or define my future. Now, I focus on moving forward. I've started fresh, with new goals and a clearer sense of what I want in life. I won't forget what happened, but I won't let it control me either. I've learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a way to find light, whether that's through justice, self-love, or simply learning to trust myself again. To anyone out there going through something similar, trust your gut, fight for what's right, and don't be afraid to walk away when someone shows their true colors. Not everyone is worth your time or your tears. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, rebuilding your life better than before. And no matter how bad it gets, there's always a way to heal, to grow, and to find happiness again. That's what I'm doing now. Moving forward one step at a time, with a clearer mind and a stronger heart. Because at the end of the day, nobody can take away your strength if you refuse to let them.